You know that I'm an official member of the media. They give out cards and everything. And so, like an official member of the media, when I need facts and information, and really just when I need to know what I'm supposed to think about things, I, of course, turn to actor Rob Reiner. Yesterday on Twitter, he said this. He was commenting on the head of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, getting sentenced to a 22-year prison sentence. And he said, well, it was for violently storming the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to overthrow the government. Wow, that's significant. He never would have been at the Capitol had it not been for Donald Trump. You do the math. Fascinating. I don't think he was actually at the Capitol. But Rob Reiner said so, so it's got to be true. Right, Julie Kelly? Owner of the Declassified with Julie Kelly Substack. Because what do you know about this stuff? You're not Rob Reiner.
Once a meathead, always a meathead. Yes, Rob Reiner. But look, he reflects the knowledge base of most Democrats in the left who really believe that Enrique Tarrio and the Proud Boys showed up with hundreds of armed men to overthrow the government and take over the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Of course, none of that happened. Enrique Tarrio was told to leave D.C. after he was arrested for burning a BLM banner in December of 2020. He wasn't even there. The Proud Boys who were there, who also were convicted and received these excessive sentences from Judge Tim Kelly. You see one of them walking through an open door with police standing nearby, another one just sort of wandering through the Capitol. They weren't destroying any property. They weren't assaulting police officers. Nonetheless, Judge Tim Kelly, in addition to the 22 years Enrique Tarrio received, Judge Kelly has imposed prison sentences totaling 82 years for 5 members of the Proud Boys. Who basically did nothing except use inflammatory language in private group chats leading up to January 6th.
Yeah, and he was convicted of seditious conspiracy and some other charges. Interesting, though, Judge Kelly, he likened him to a general rather than a soldier since he wasn't actually there. But he said that he was, and I'm quoting now, the ultimate leader of the conspiracy, which I know that you have some strong feelings about that, and I'll get to them in a moment, but if this guy, Mr. Tarrio, is the ultimate leader of the conspiracy, then what's all this about Donald Trump being the ringleader and stirring everybody up to go and do this? Were they the multiple leaders, or did Donald Trump take his marching orders from Enrique Tarrio?
No, what the government has said, and this is why this continues to pose legal jeopardy for Donald Trump, is this Department of Justice routinely mentioned Donald Trump during the trial. And they even said that the so-called conspiracy that you just referred to began on December 19th of 2020 when Donald Trump tweeted, "Come to D.C. on January 6th, will be wild." This Department of Justice said that was the day that Enrique Tarrio and his troops of the Proud Boys decided that they were going to go to January 6th and allegedly overthrow the government. DOJ also, these prosecutors, and I was in the courtroom when this happened during closing arguments, they played again the September 2020 clip during the presidential debate when Donald Trump said, "Proud Boys, stand back and stand by." DOJ said that that was a call to arms to the Proud Boys, and that's when their recruitment went off the charts. So Tim Kelly's use of the word general was very specific and targeted, because if he's the general, who is he taking orders from? To your point, Donald Trump.
Oh, the commander-in-chief. I see, the commander-in-chief. Yeah. All right. By the way, when the government asserts that, is there any challenge? They may assert that Donald Trump was making a call to arms, but there's no evidence to support that. Was there anybody in the courtroom to actually challenge that and say that assertion has actually no basis in truth?
Oh, absolutely. Look, the defense attorneys in this case worked diligently. They were very devoted. They came up with, good motions. They tried to move this trial out of Washington, D.C. Judge Tim Kelly refused to do so. But look, all of this fell on deaf ears before Judge Tim Kelly. He's a former federal prosecutor in the very same office, D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, that's prosecuting every single one of these cases. He used to work directly with one of the top prosecutors handling this case. And he's married to a top deputy for D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. He is a swamp rat. And so he knew exactly what he was doing, and just really flagrantly violated the due process and constitutional rights of these defendants. Instead of protecting them, as one defense attorney told me, he acted as another member of the prosecution team. And that's exactly what happened too with these excessive sentences. So we'll see what happens from here. We know that Special Counsel Jack Smith still has his DC grand jury working on January 6 matters. And I really do not feel like he is finished with Donald Trump, that this existing 4-count indictment is all we're going to see out of Jack Smith for targeting Donald Trump.
I think you're right. They just have to time it for a bad Biden news cycle before they announce what their next step is. Julie, I've read a lot of your coverage here at Declassified with Julie Kelly, your Substack, and I know you don't think that Mr. Tarrio was guilty of seditious conspiracy and didn't deserve a 22-year sentence. But the Proud Boys that were there on the ground that day, do you believe they're guilty of anything? Do you think that there's something they did wrong?
Well, you certainly could charge them with regular trespassing charges, maybe shaking this metal fence that Judge Kelly just turned into a federal crime of terrorism, I guess some sort of vandalism. But the idea that they got together and formed this seditious conspiracy, and look, the burden of proof is basically non-existent for a charge like that.
Yeah.
So they added up all of these felony counts, but sure, they should be charged, but nowhere near to what they have been charged or sentenced. And keep in mind, they've all been in jail.
Right.
For months.
They've served 3 years
actually,
in solitary.
denied release. That's right.
By the way, you talked about how the judge has determined that this is a felony, shaking that little loose barrier that you see sometimes at these rallies. You posted video of the Black Lives Matter protests at Lafayette Square, just yards from the White House, where the Black Lives Matter protesters took that very same barrier, dragged it down and threw it away, and then went right up into the face of Secret Service agents. How many were arrested and convicted that night, Julie Kelly?
Not only were all of those rioters not charged, any of them that were charged, this very same office, DC U.S. Attorney's Office, dropped all of the counts against those rioters. Of course, they posed far more danger to Donald Trump. Recall, he had to go into a bunker, and the media made fun of him for that. These rioters also tried to scale the fences, protecting the White House.
To get to 1,600,
they weren't charged. So the idea that shaking a temporary metal fence on Capitol grounds makes you a terrorist. I mean, we are in totally new territory, Larry. And I'll tell you, Republicans in Congress and across this country have no idea what is happening in these courtrooms and the precedent that is being set for all of us in the future.
Speaking of Republicans in Congress, I know that you were one of the journalists who had access to the January 6th security footage that Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy promised he would release. Where does that stand right now?
So, Larry, they released new guidelines, the House, last week that again acted as, or put up filters for the American people. Media organizations can go in and view this. I have to go to DC. I have to go to a House building. They have terminals set up. There's hundreds of cameras. It's a very complicated system. I understand that, which is why at first I thought that this was a good idea, that journalists who understand the subject matter could have access to this footage, request clips, etc. But here we are months later. They have set up new filters for journalists to go view this, nonprofits, and defendants. Well, as I posted on Twitter over the weekend, that is not fulfilling House Republican and Speaker Kevin McCarthy's pledge to make this footage publicly available. So over the past few days, I've been in communication with some House officials, and I think that they are retooling that policy, and they are in the process of building a platform so Americans can start to see some of the clips that we have produced, that they have produced, other journalists produced, and I think this will be happening on produced on a rolling basis, which is absolutely necessary for transparency and for Republicans to keep their promise.
Yeah, I agree, and that's good news that pressure like that, mostly pressure from you, Julie Kelly, seems to have gotten them to rethink their position on this. Thank you for staying on it. We'll continue to read Declassified with Julie Kelly. That's her Substack, and you're getting journalism. This is the whole purpose of a Substack. You get reporting and journalism there that you literally aren't getting anywhere else. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Larry.
There's more to come on O'Connor tonight on a busy night here at Salem News Channel.